Approved. All right, the second order of business is to review an update to the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance understanding. Is that what this is?
So it's the Bennington County Solid Waste Implementation Plan, specific to the communities that are listed, basically. Arlington, Bennington, Dorset, Glastonbury, Manchester, Pownell, Rupert, Sandgate, Searsburg, Shaftesbury, Stamford, Sunderland, and Woodford. The document's in the packet, and we're basically reviewing, getting an update from Scott, and then looking to, I think, approve it, right, Scott?
Yeah, I'd like a vote
Right.
to say that the town is in favor of the plan.
Yeah.
So Allison, we have Scott Grimlyon from the Bennington County Regional Commission.
Hello,
And
my name's Scott
sorry.
Grimline. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
The folks can see me.
Court's yours.
Thank you very much. I'll just
So you're good, Scott. I can move the camera.
Hello. As Rob said, my name is Scott Grimline with the Bennington County Regional Commission. I am the program manager for the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance, which is an interlocal contract. It's an agreement between the 13 towns listed that we spoke of before to help meet a series of state requirements when it comes to solid waste management. What those state requirements are listed throughout this plan that's been put in front of you. So that's the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance, the 2025 Solid Waste Implementation Plan. This is something that happens once every 5 years. The state will update its materials management plan, and then the following year, each of the solid waste management entities from around the state need to develop a solid waste implementation plan that relates to any changes in the materials management plan. And it's largely a series of requirements as listed out, and then a series of formulas that the state has given us related to how the interpretation of the materials management plan is put into place. And then it's just us as an organization addressing how we will meet each of those requirements. So there's very little material difference in this than the plan that was passed 5 years ago. The main addition that has been added to the materials management plan and this solid waste implementation plan is that there's a requirement for us as a solid waste entity to work with towns and to do some work with the local emergencies operations crews over the next couple of years to identify locations and plans for a post-flood scenario where residents could bring debris and in a way that will make sure that it is compliant with whatever FEMA and federal payback requirements are. So that's something that had some difficulty with on the north side of the state a couple of years ago. There was some debris that people were clearing out of their basement that was going across town lines, and then towns didn't get properly reimbursed. So this is a means of trying to prevent that, being a little proactive for the next scenario. Other things, there's a couple of changes to just the way that the website needs to be managed. So we have a website that outlines where everyone within this 13 town alliance is able to drop off all kinds of manners of waste, everything from listing all of the apparel bins, and parking lots, so people know where to put old clothes, to garages that will take old motor oil, to and actually in the appendix area of this plan is a lot of the stuff that is also included on the website as far as all those requirements goes. What the state is actually doing, what additionally requiring are some just some flexibility with the website, making it so that its text is multiple sizes and things like that for accessibility purposes. Some dyslexia functions and things like that, which are becoming standardized for all government related websites moving forward in a couple of years, I think. And yeah, and largely this outlines how our community engagement strategy will work. So you know, we will be visiting 40 businesses a year. We will be visiting, you know, 3 schools a year, and you know, we will continue to work based upon the population size that we have, and the number of businesses we have, and the number of schools that we have, to appropriately meet those state goals. We operate as lean as we can. We have 2 folks working on the program that both put 20 hours a week into this project. One of them is a consultant, Paula Camperman, who works with us, and she does a lot of the evening and weekend meetings, especially when it comes to outreach. She'll go to events, like I mentioned earlier. She's a regular at the Dorset Farmers Market in the summers. This year there's a space issue, so she hasn't managed to get in yet, but hopefully by the end of the fall, but by sometime by the fall she'll have had a couple of dates. But she's still also you know, talking to folks as well, event organizers and other things. Basically everything's being organized within the plan here. As far as our general means of outreach to the public, how we get that information out. Also, we talk to event organizers. We've reached out a number of times to the folks who have the horse competition here in Dorset about solid waste issues, and making sure that they're recycling on site, and doing their best to follow local laws. They're an out-of-state company, so they're not too enthusiastic to be working with us, but we do knock on their doors every year and remind them of what the requirements are for holding events in Vermont. You know, and we also manage the household hazardous waste collection facility, which is the largest line item in our budget, aside from staff, which is even more. Anyway, which is open between May and October on every single Monday. We operate out of the Bennington transfer station. Historically, we had a couple of events. We used to have one right here at the elementary school, and this was a cost-saving measure. So now everyone within the Alliance can go to our single-use facility, where we only have a limited staff over there collecting. And then we are bulking the items, as opposed to when you collect them very fast, you have to put everything into, you can't take things out of their original packaging. So somebody comes with a gallon of gasoline, you know, you don't get to pour that into a 55-gallon drum, because you're just taking it and dropping it into a barrel for disposal. And so therefore we've saved some costs by, you know, having fewer shipments, even though we're collecting the same amount of waste, because we're separating the packaging from the waste itself before we dispose of it.
Is it the same amount of waste since you've, you know, gone to the single location?
So we've actually collected less waste since we've gone to the single location, and we actually have had fewer participants in the program as a whole, as far as the number of citizens every year. Let me get that. I actually have those numbers. We collected 30 tons of waste last year, and in our 2022 season, we collected 46 tons of waste. So that was 613 participants in 2022, and 327 in 2024. So that, you know, and that we did collect about 16 tons less waste, and we served not quite half, but half the number of households. The thing is, people have dropped off substantially higher rates of waste as well. So, you know, during the events, people were dropping off about 100-ish pounds of what we call waste per household, and now they're doing 187 waste pounds per household. So people are going through their stuff a little more thoroughly. and probably coming less often than they would.
Okay. I noticed in here you had the ordinances from just a couple of towns.
Yeah, well, the towns, the model legislation there, all 13 of our towns did pass it. It would have been a very long appendices if we listed all of them.
But all the towns, each town has to have an ordinance, and we do. And
Yeah, all of the towns, except for Glastonbury, have an ordinance. They're part of the coalition. That's the same model legislation that's there, which is the pay-as-you-throw ordinance, which is effectively, excuse me, a rule that says you have to charge for trash pickup based on volume. So if someone is, you can't have a sort of all you can throw out for one low price a month for your as a trash hauler. You have to make sure that there is a if you are producing more waste that's going to the landfill, that there is a financial element that sort of relates to that. So if you are throwing out additional waste, it needs to be that. And then in addition, your recycling is not charged there.
So it's just, are you the one that's doing the 20 hours with Paula doing the other 20 hours?
Yeah. Yes. So I'm doing my work is working with the state, making sure there's compliance, and then doing the actual management of the hazardous waste facility as well.
Yeah. Are there any new ordinances that the state is suggesting this time around?
We did just have a couple of, in this recent legislative session, there was an update to a new hazardous waste extended producer responsibility law. So one of the things that we help manage is there's a program called the Paint Care Program, which a lot of people are familiar with. We collect paint at the hazardous waste facility and at a number of hardware stores throughout the county. They also collect paint. There's a fee put on that at the time of purchase. Everyone in the state gets an additional, it's like $2 for a pint and $5 for a gallon. Fee added to your paint purchase that goes to fund the program. We collect that paint, that gets recycled, that gets sent down to a place in Rhode Island is where we send it. Burlington recycles it on their own. They have their own facility to do that, and that gets all managed by a funding source. There's a number of other categories of hazardous waste that the state is attempting to have something similar happen to as well. That bill got passed, but they had trouble with the RFP process and getting everything off the ground. So that's been kicked. We have been told that this legislative session authorizes the Agency of Natural Resources to work with us, so we don't necessarily have to pay for everything ourselves. Part of our hazardous waste collection is currently, there's a $50,000 grant that comes from the state, about $50,000 that offsets some of the costs for the local municipalities, and how that money is going to come in the future is all based on this extended producer responsibility and somebody responding to the RFP and all of that happening. So, there's a chance that next year we won't have to have the same number of dates available for the requirement. Right now we have to be open for 18 weeks. It may go down to 12 or something like that, in order to sort of offset the cost until all the funding stream and everything is in place. But that's the main thing in the legislative session that sort of affected us. There was also some additions to the paint program, so that's going to now include aerosols, and so all that is sort of being what's categorized under one thing, what's categorized under another is kind of a little bit in the weeds, but ultimately, the waste. That's what's happening on the waste field. So
is every town part of it?
We as a are a little bit unique. What's much more common, I mean, sometimes there are even looser entities. So if the folks over in Landgrove You know, they're part of a small group of just 5 towns with Peru, and they all operate out of one transfer station. Actually, the other thing is I help manage the integrated solid waste program, which means that the Dorset transfer station is shared with everyone from with 6 towns between Arlington, Sunderland, Manchester, Sandgate, and yeah,
Dorset.
and Dorset, yes, and Dorset, and you know, you can go to the Sunderland transfer station, and some folks, you know, folks from Arlington can come up here if they need to, and that is also an interlocal contract that's between a smaller group of people, but a lot of towns have what they call their solid waste districts, which have a little bit more latitude. They act a little bit more like a governmental body, and they don't have to have their solid waste implementation plan approved by the individual select boards in the same way that we do. As an alliance, you know, we're a little leaner, we're a little more accountable to the individual select boards, and we have a little bit less of a breadth of responsibility because we are not actively managing transfer stations and the contracts related to them as well. So, you know, you guys have an interlocal contract with a smaller group of towns, but the town of Pownell has their own, you know, transfer station that they manage the budget for themselves, etc. Whereas, you know, if you go over to Windham County, they have a solid waste management district, and all the transfer stations within that district are managed by the solid waste management, by the entity there that controls them.
So this
they have a
alliance-
little bit more of something that's akin to taxing authority. They can add fees to everyone's, they can add fees to private haulers and a couple of things too that we don't have the authority to do.
So our alliance is born out of BCRC.
Born out of the communities, trying to do it as efficiently and simply as possible.
Yeah.
BCRC was
And BCRC is
generous enough
the
to take
entity
it on.
that
Yeah.
is,
Yeah, so BCRC works.
working for us.
Yeah, there's an annual contract with BCRC to manage the program.
Yeah.
But the contract itself lives on beyond that, and it's actually not exactly contiguous with the borders of BCRC, because nothing is ever simple or easy. But, you know, so folks up in Searsburg are not part of BCRC, but they are part of our alliance. They happen to be mileage.
It's
kinda what I-
This is all gonna be part of negotiation.
Yeah, and we
But I
do
think
due
some of that-
diligence, but they're gonna do their own due diligence.
Right.
So,
But on some of that, you know, it also depends on if you're talking about if you did something like 1 or 2 apartment buildings, you know, in there, something like that.
Yeah.
Then suddenly your unit count can go. Question is that going to sell around? You know, is that going to be attractive around here? It's
yeah, the
What
unit
about the
count.
it's a way to
waste.
get. It's a way to get it. You know, a lot more.
Right.
Hold the
absolutely.
cost down and
Well, in Vermont, the unit count's gonna be based on the soils and the water that we can
Yeah.
bring to it.
Yeah.
right.
Period,
Right.
end of story.
We've already,
We
I
could
think,
build one
determined
apartment out
that.
there, and that would be
Supply and septic rules.
right.
Right. Right.
So that, you know,
But that goes back to the.
So that's
the
just the natural
infrastructure.
backstop we're going to have regardless.
yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
You know, but, and again, that comment about the additional unit count is just that they're gonna do their own due diligence, right? They're gonna have their own engineers, they're gonna have their own thoughts about stuff, and they're gonna look at it just like we did. Which was kind of to the point of, you know, the committee and the town got to the point where we had done a decent amount of due diligence, and we hit that inflection point where it made sense to bring in developers because we're not developers,
Right.
and we don't know what's feasible and what's not. So before we, you know, were to go further into either more due diligence or design work or anything like that, it's like, I think we did a pretty good job of kind of stopping short, bringing in White and Burke and kind of facilitating this process, I think at a really good point where we took it far enough in terms of the environmental and the due diligence work that it should pave the road to make it kind of easier, quicker, simpler for whoever does.
It has so much more credibility
Well, yeah, I mean,
because, hey, we have
they're
tests
not-
that say we can do at
there's
least
less.
up to 100.
Yeah, we've mitigated risk.
But we still
basically.
don't know everything. You know.
Yeah,
It's-
we've mitigated risk. We don't
But-
know all of it, but it's much better than if it was just a kind of a virgin chunk of land that nobody
Yep.
really knew
Right.
anything about.
Right.
But then,
So,
you know, just curious, like, I know Integrated Vermont, they proposed a plan in Manchester down.
Oh, at the
You know,
airport.
at the
That's
sorry,
actually-
Allison.
So
Here we are.
they
That's
made,
okay. I can hear you better now. Thank you.
they made a proposal down there, and I'm curious, one, how similar that proposal was to what they're kind of suggesting here. Also, whether there were other people who expressed interest in that project, which I don't think has had as much background work done on
I
it.
only know of what
Location.
Paul did and then what Kyle Murphy had submitted, which was 500 units. It didn't make sense to me.
Okay. But I, just thinking of it from the perspective of it'd be interesting to, can we, be interesting to keep an eye on what, else in the area is going on and how these people
Sure.
are.
A little perspective is that I believe that the responses to that, that there were, Herman Construction actually had one too, I think.
Yeah.
That two of them asked for 12 to 18 months of due diligence, which is what we've just done, basically.
Okay.
And so hopefully with the work that we've done, we've sped up that window to where that when we get these proposals, they're not going to ask for 12 to 18 months of
Right.
background engineering.
Right.
They're going to say, give us your stuff. We're going to do some of our stuff, and we feel like we would be able to get into design in whatever 6 months, 12, whatever the
Right,
number
right.
is. And that I think that's a little bit of the difference between our project and other projects out there. So I think it's a good to have three
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
Really,
like that it's some
one of the
local
hardest things that we
interest,
do
you know.
is to try to get multiple entities to respond to things, and it can just be really difficult. So to get three, I think, is a really good. Get three that are interested. So now if we
Yeah.
get three actual proposals,
And I consider two of
And
these being
that's
really
great,
local.
too.
Where, SM Graves, where are they actually located, sort of?
Rutland.
They are in Rutland.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
But
there's
they
all-
haven't,
He lives in Rutland.
he just lives in Rutland,
Yeah.
but they do work.
all over the country.
I think
All
what's
over the place,
I
but
think what's great about these three is that there's such a variety of experiences from each of them. Nail and Breen is a construction company. Neither of these other two are construction companies. They're developers. And Nail and Breen is partnering with Cornerstone, which has their own specialty, which is. So I think it's
well,
it's
these
very
guys have a lot
interesting.
of ties here and
Yeah.
a lot of.
Local and regional ties.
That
on
gives
all
them
of
some
which
more
is great.
credibility, I think.
Right. Like the first one where it's all these names we've thrown around. Shires Housing,
Yep.
NeighborWorks, Housing Truck. These are all
Yeah.
people we've been talking about
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see how they've come together.
Yeah, no, I think we're uniquely positioned right now, and I think the timing is good with some of the other stuff that might be coming out in terms of state programs, so. Again, the RFP timing probably couldn't be better, just, based on the
Great.
situation that we're in,
So
so.
do you want to motion that?
Yeah,
the-
I think it's important that we actually move on this and
Yes.
approve it as a Board of Selectmen.
Make a motion this time?
I would make a motion to have
I would say just approve the White and Burke memorandum.
RFP?
and move forward with this supplemental RFP.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Do we want to see the RFP before it goes out, or shall we just trust in
Actually-
Rob to?
I think we do, because I remember the last RFP we had language that was not concerning, but
We had some
we were
questions.
talking about, the way it was written could mean to be the entire parcel, and we were
Yeah.
trying to focus.
Yeah.
So assuming
Is
they
that
can
gonna
get it to
hold
us.
things up?
No, it's it's like it's simpler than the
Okay.
RFQ. It's actually less pages than the RFQ.
So
But
you
we
just-
want to get it out before.
Yeah,
Before we
wanna
meet
get it
again.
out, so.
So we may want
So,
to, you
if-
could
Is there?
send it out, just, we could individually make any comments?
yep,
Yeah.
if we're good with that, yeah, okay.
Works for me.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's got the time frame to respond. It's got all the, I think there's 12 bullet points that they have to respond to, from schematic design all the way to, what we talked about, which is how are you gonna develop it, how many affordable units, how would you keep it affordable in perpetuity, all that stuff.
So that the final RFP will be available from Whitenburg, when do we think?
It's ready now,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So, you'll see it within 24 hours.
Options for
Yeah, and you just never,
something could
you just
land
never
wrong.
know, you never know. Things can,
like
things
with-
can come along and, again, with the infrastructure stuff, if you're planning and you're ready, you can pick something off a shelf pretty quickly, project-wise, right? And get it out to bid and get some
Well, it's like
prices, and if there's money and funding available, then you can do it quickly. But if you haven't planned or
Right.
gone through the,
That's
depending
like
on.
the Communications Union District. It was all working on it, and the idea of, well, having to get financing and doing all that, and then boom,
There it
pandemic, all of a sudden.
There's your money.
All the money was sitting there,
Yep.
and we had the plan,
and they were ready.
so let's take the money and do it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, no, it's a good example for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Frank, it started with Dorset tomorrow, really.
Yeah,
Right.
And 2018, 19?
yeah, we bought it in 18 and
And then,
19. That was kind of what started some of the
and
housing.
then the pandemic happened,
discussion.
and then whatever we did in that Dorset tomorrow became obvious.
Yeah.
And bingo, we just, okay, great. That's,
We've got a good town manager.
yeah,
Yeah.
For sure.
remember that line, if you're not planning, you're planning
Yeah.
to fail.
If you
fail to
fail to
plan,
plan,
If you
you're
fail to
planning
plan,
fail.
you're planning to fail.
Yep.
Okay, next is we need to pay another requisition to Nail and Green for the,
make a motion to approve the next payment of $168,311.89.
I'll second that.
okay, any discussion? Obviously, it's about a third of what we paid last month, so that's good news. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I
And I can give
Aye.
a quick, so we're about 80% to completion with the office. We're in the process of trying to whittle away at the price of furniture and stuff like that, so that's exciting. 80% means flooring is almost done. Glass is about to go into partitions and windows. Yeah, built-in stuff is gonna be installed soon.
You also said it's getting closer to being on
It
budget.
is, yeah, so we're actually looking at potentially getting some of the contingency back, which is just the percentage that Naylor and Breen kind of held out to cover anything that might just kind of jump up. And that number's kind of oscillated up and down a little bit, but right now it's either a little bit less or a little bit more than around $100,000, which is good because the change orders that the project has experienced have been about 130. So it just means that we're just pretty close to the number. So it's a $3.2 million construction project. So being under $100,000 or thereabouts, as it relates to the total project is pretty good as a percentage.
Yep.
So yeah, we're hopeful that that'll kind of see through. At the 80% point, there's not a lot of stuff, not a lot of inside stuff that could surprise us. Outside stuff is just landscaping, building the parking lot, sidewalks, a little bit of stormwater, I think. And the site work should be happening, if not this week, next week. And then it'll really start to look like, you'll see the parking lot, you'll see some topsoil and turf and the sidewalks and all that stuff. And then, I think Homestead is doing the landscaping install. So all that stuff will start to, it may progress like a little bit through the summer, and there may be some stuff that gets held back to get planted like later in the year when it makes sense. But it'll start to get real. So I think, I was talking with Henry earlier, I think that the September select board meeting would be the first one in the new facility. So
So I've only got 2 more I can walk to? Is that what you're
Yes.
telling me?
Sorry, Frank.
Yeah, sorry.
You can,
How dare you?
I can pick you up on the way over the hill.
What, on the other side of the road, I just noticed there was some new tree clearing. Is that parking there? Wasn't sure.
So we had some additional tree cutting that we had done behind the building itself. And there was this kind of a clutch of red pines over there
Yeah.
on that other side of the road. And while the machine was there, we had them take
Okay.
some stuff.
But that's
there.
not parking or anything?
No, I think we may make some plans, once we get the parking lot built, you know, we're trying to, you know, the meeting room, you know, hoping it's gonna be able to hold between that 75 and 85, number. Which it looks like it should, it'll be tight.
Yeah.
It'll very comfortably fit 60 to 65 easily. But the parking becomes kind of a bit of an
Right,
issue.
where's everybody gonna
and
go?
with our time of year and town meetings usually March, there's often snow.
Right, so you can't
that-
just line the road.
You could try to line the road, but then you're
Yeah,
That's
that's-
it's not ideal. So
Some of the
The
plans.
fire marshal might have.
right. The long-term thought is to try to maybe have some overflow parking over there.
Didn't
Yeah,
some of the
at
least
plans-
temporarily.
Some of the
Yeah.
plans showed that.
They did, but we didn't, I don't think.
Didn't include it in the
We didn't
contract.
permit it that way and we didn't include it in the contract, no.
Yeah.
No. So we could try to do that, you know, ourselves. And do
Because that's
it
just a
in-
gravel lot. It's
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And that,
Run shuttles up from J.K. Adams.
Yeah, plenty of
yeah,
parking there.
that's a
Rent a
good,
shuttle bus for the night.
yeah, it's a good idea, actually. So that's the, you know, that's kind of the long of the update. And it's a beautiful building and Nail and Brian's done a great job. So it's gonna be exciting to get in there.
Yeah.
So, and as you can kind of see, not so much, but we're all in the process of tidying up our own workspaces so that we're not moving materials that don't need to be moved. And boy, let me tell you, when you work in the same place for 17 years,
Generate a lot
you
of
generate a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do our best to, yeah, get that done. I think the vault is actually, the new vault's going to be built out in a couple of weeks, which is exciting. And that vendors, when we're ready, is going to actually pack and move all of the land record stuff, so that we're not going to have to deal with it, which is good because it's kind of a professional thing that get the way they pack it and the way they move it and all that stuff. So that's good.
Great.
The bond is 3.5,
3.6.
3.6,
Yep.
and the building's 3.2. Okay.
Yep.
All right, next order of business is to approve our sheriff's contract for
The next year, yep, July 1.
July 1.
Yeah, July
Okay.
1, 25, June 30th, 26.
And there's only one little change.
One change in the hourly rate, that's it.
What was the hourly rate?
75,
Now it's 85.
85. I think it's 12%, roughly. And that's progressively gone up
Now
over the past few years, but I don't think unduly, and I don't think for reasons that
Yeah.
aren't valid.
The administration fee, do we actually get charged? It sounds like it's almost an optional thing. The extra 5%.
I'd have
We're
to,
entitled to compensation in a rate.
I'd have to look at it invoice, Jim. The ones that I recall are mostly just the bulk rate for the sheriff times however many hours that he's worked.
It's probably like an end of the year thing if we are a little under budget, you know, we need to.
But I think, like when there was the election, some guys were saying, okay, well, I won't take an extra fee or something. They were kind of, it was, because it was a little bit about, during the election, are you in this to try to make a killing, or are you,
Sure.
and
Yeah, I just know if you take the hourly rate and you look at the summary of hours that they work, it's pretty close to the number that we pay.
because even with the, administration fee, if applicable, then it says, as administrator shall be entitled to compensation at a rate not to exceed 5% of the total contract amount. So it's, may be taken within the calendar year in which the revenue under this contract was received, so it, you know, the sheriff may elect to be paid.
Yeah, which when the invoice, that would stick out in the invoice
Yeah.
as a separate line.
So he's probably not charging.
And
the
it would
extra.
it would pretty instantly get flagged, especially if it was one charge for the whole 5%. It would be a pretty big
Yeah,
number.
big number.
Yeah, so those are the type of stuff where the finance department would be like, whoa,
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, I think it's the minimum is 40. We typically will do the 40 and often more. Staffing that they've provided since we've had the change guard of really the staffing they've provided since we've had the contract, I think has been more than adequate, and I think it's been they've done a good job. So
And you're the one that manages them on weekly?
more or less, I mean, they have a set schedule. As long as we get the 40 hours, and we typically like to mix in nights and weekends every once in a while. So most of the 40 hours are going to be like the 9 to 5 type stuff, or 8 to 4, whatever.
But if it's like Halloween and
Those are the kind of the specials where within reason they usually will flex out the schedule to try to include that in the 40 hours if they can.
Yeah.
If it's extra, it's extra.
And you've got the Dorset Church rummage sales, red flagged,
Oh yeah, no, all the special dates are there.
But this, it doesn't, I don't think it says anything about, we've liked having a person assigned. And it doesn't really require that, but, so that's just an informal arrangement.
Yeah, I don't know that they would sign in the contract that they would give us a dedicated individual. I just think it takes away too much flexibility because the department is not that big.
Yep. Couldn't understand.
Yeah, so they very often have to have, our officer fill in for specials and do other stuff. So they may, the 40 hours they're with us may only be just a portion of what they work. So.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the sheriff's contract as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay, do you want us to sign that? Or is that
I
you
have
sign?
I have a clean copy here.
Or maybe it's just you signing.
It's either me or it could be the select board.
No, it's just you.
Sure.
Yeah, why don't you just sign it?
Okay.
Okay, old business, old and new business.
Yep, town office we talked about. Flooding update, there's not a whole lot of change other than the grass doesn't seem to want to grow where the site was.
Understandable.
We've done a lot. I mean, we gave it a second effort this spring, so it's coming along slower than we thought. But no change in the Brookside piece. We're still trying to finalize some info so that we can make an application to FEMA and the state. MSK is working along with the East Dorset kind of village traffic / design stuff, and I'm hoping they did the survey work a while back. I'm hoping they'll have some more information sometime this summer. Short-term rentals, we're up to 50, and we're still about at that. I think about 10 to 12 that are kind of probably need to register. I guess is the best way to explain that. And that number, it kind of comes and goes. And then reappraisal is probably the last kind of new thing to talk about. The grand list should be filed this week. Letters should go out, I think, on Friday with the new valuation numbers. After, if you recall, we did a preliminary kind of value notification and also preliminary informal hearings. And not we, the NEMC, the consultant, did the hearings, over the 5 days. They, I think, interacted with over 400 different entities, 400 different property owners.
Yeah.
And the number is, the preliminary number for the grand list has gone down about 4%.
Is that
And that's kind of,
this
that's pretty normal.
57?
Yep.
So that was the old number.
That's the old number, that's the new number,
I
yep.
was just curious about,
Yep.
what was the number you used to reach?
Projection that I've included in there is dropping it down additionally based on grievances and trying to forecast like, okay, worst case, this is what like the worst rate might look like.
So you're guessing we'd come out 1,258,000, or, you know,
Just get
worst case.
Yeah, worst case if it
Worst
drops
case.
down another percentage
which
chunk
would
like
be,
that.
that would be another
Another like
100 million. Yeah.
another 4 or 5%, yeah.
Yeah.
So, which it's unlikely that it will, but just to try to project a rate that is kind of like a not to exceed number. So, because we're starting to get into, you know, the formal valuations will go out. So now hopefully we can give
So
them.
this week, you're.
Yeah, on Friday. So now people can do the math, and if we give them a number that hopefully is only going to be lower than that, you know, they're able to kind of budget or make a worst case kind of scenario mathematical equation for it. So.
But the next phase is just a straight grievance. That's
so
still
when
the assessor and MC would do that next step.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And then whatever comes out of grievances, denials or appeals or whatever goes to the Board of Civil Authority.
Okay.
Yep.
And there will be, you know, BCA hearings for sure. But how many, we don't know. I think the biggest thing to take away is I think all the office staff has done Margot obviously has done an amazing job just trying to keep up with the touch points from residents. I mean, it's you think you live in a small town until 500 people are trying to individually talk to you, and it's not. It's difficult. So it was definitely leading up to the informals and getting information from people was pretty hectic. It's a difficult process to try to. You know, when you have 1,500 parcels, so there's 1,500 potential touch points, and you've got basically 2 or 3 office staff to try to backstop all of that interaction. It just seems like a kooky way to do it. But so the lesson learned, I think, is just to be, you know, as we move forward, the state's actually talking about a different process and more frequently done. I think that there was an educational portion of what had to be done with the informals that maybe if it, you know, if reappraisals happen more frequently, you wouldn't have to do the education.
Yeah.
And that's just because
Yeah,
it's
even
been
on-
a while. you
Even
know?
on a basic level, I've
Yep.
talked to so many people, I'm
Yep.
sure you have, who think
Yep.
I'm paying twice as much as taxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
But
no.
we're not, you know, basically, you know, we've approved, but the budgets are approved. We're not asking for more money.
Right.
And we have more value to take the money from. So the rates go down, basically.
Now here,
And it runs the gamut from, you know, your bill may go up, it may stay the same, and it may go down.
yeah.
So,
But on this, making the adjustments, you know, there was only one farm and it went down to a third of the value. But that was kind of a, wow, that's a change, but you know, that's just one property. But then in Woodlands, there were 51 properties and they went down to 70% of the original assessed value. Just wondering if there's anything we're kind of, are those kind of the basis that they were using as a little aggressive or?
I'm not
Yeah.
sure what the best answer is.
Yeah, I don't really need an answer on that. I'm just curious.
Yep. So I think that the things to keep in mind is that they more or less had to build a kind of a new data set and a new database because it had been so long.
Yeah.
And even the 2003 reappraisal that was done in-house. So
Wow.
really in modern times, there's been no professional consultant
Yeah.
that's done it. So I think that there's a little bit of, you know, growing pains isn't the right word, but just kind of professionalism and updating and modernizing of the data that we're going to see over, you know, over this
Yeah.
as we move forward.
Now, we only have one property that actually is specifically classified as farm.
Was it the, up the road? Which farm would that be, I wonder?
I don't know.
BB? No.
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
No,
Flat Farm
I don't know. I think it's-
or Sunday Farm?
Just surprised to see only one.
no, well,
course,
that's,
the other
that's farm
farm-
for assessment purposes,
Yeah,
right? There's farms for assessment purposes. There's farms for
could be a commercial
probably
properties that are
IRS and tax purposes
Right.
or different things.
Right.
Okay,
That's,
so it's
that's
still
not
like,
indicative of you only have one farm, is what I'm saying.
so like woodland shouldn't be confused with current use. Because most of current use is probably woodland.
Correct. Yeah. Like I said, I'm happy to try to get answers, but I'm not gonna know them.
Yeah, no, I think we're good.
So, and I think,
don't need answers.
yeah, I think
They're
the,
busy enough.
More curious.
well, and we've been, I think, I'm not sure if, I've said this to so many people, but when they do the work, they statutorily have to look back from April 1st, 22 until March 31st, 25. That's the window that they look back into. Over that window, there was 175 sales. Out of the 175 sales, 75 of them either had the building torn down or so significantly renovated that it was basically not the same property anymore. And that's, so that makes it, the ones where they tear it down, now the value of the sale starts to, get attributed to the land. Which I think has had some impacts on the base land values in town. Just,
Well,
between that and there are straight land sales with pretty high numbers that I think that's an underlying, piece where the land value has increased based on the sales data.
Thought it was interesting. We came in and talked, just kind of wanted to run through the stuff, and ours, it wasn't the land that was the huge, sort of change on ours, but clearly the guy started off with, well, first the land was the big change, and it was like, and then it wasn't with ours, but I think they must have been finding the value of the land was really significant in a whole lot of cases.
The value of the land, where it includes the, house site, driveway,
Yeah.
well, like that's what, not the excess acreage or anything.
The excess acreage was a pretty low number
The
per
basic
acre.
house site, like what somebody
Yeah.
would buy a kind of ready piece of land in Dorset.
Because the one during training when we did it,
That's what's,
that one was,
That's what's
that was the
increased.
category 9, and it was $450 an acre for,
Yeah,
for that first.
because
it's the Dorset brand.
it's the first 2 acres.
Yeah.
Rob, do we traditionally or historically have set the mill rate in the July meeting?
Mm-hmm.
So are we gonna
We will
have
have
to
it.
sell?
We will have a
determine-
grand list abstract number that you can use to set it, with the caveat of, you got a bunch of grievances to go through. So
Can we adjust it in the August meeting?
Yeah.
We can, okay, okay.
ideally, it gets a little funky. I mean, ideally, we collect that second week of September, so we want to have the bills out probably before the August meeting. So maybe we're looking at a special meeting, but
Okay.
I think I can get some reconnaissance for, what that looks like, because in theory, before the July meeting, we should be done with the grievance hearings
Before the July meeting?
before our July meeting.
Oh, yeah, meaning that, yeah, the grievance
So-
meetings, but we'll still
Not
have
the
the
BCA.
BCRs.
Still have the
We still have
BCA,
the
yeah.
BCA meetings.
So and you're gonna set the stuff regardless of the BCA being complete, just like we have to we send the bills out, people make payments. If somebody goes to the state or something like that and gets lowered, we eat that money. Money still goes to the school or to the state. It's a kooky process, but yeah, we should have some pretty good color in the July meeting as to like, okay, here's our number that we're going to use to set the rate,
Okay.
grand list wise. There may be some movement, but the movement's going to very unlikely with the movement
It's
have.
gonna be nothing like this movement.
Correct, yeah. I mean, if you see the mill rate goes out to, 4 or 5 digits, it's like, it's unlikely that it's gonna have any impact on the first 3 digits for sure. Would just be basically, fractions of a penny. Literally,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
So, yep. So we will definitely be planning on, town tax rate at the next meeting.
Oh, also, just to kind of mention, with the education bill, we're talking about the change in education taxes starting in like 2028, and then phasing in over a 5-year period for because you'd be essentially going to a single,
Yeah, different.
we've had homestead, non-homestead. Now it would be homestead, and then a couple of categories of non-homestead. So it could be commercial versus second home. But it would be generally like the homestead tax rate being pretty much the same across the whole state. So it would be, in 2028, you'd start to, you'd feed it in 20% per year over 5 years, to kind of get to the equalized, point to have the full impact. But we're talking, it's not that far off. It could be 2028 where we'd start to see the change in the tax approach for ed taxes.
Okay. Is that old?
Yep,
Rest of
that's
your,
all I got for
your
that.
business? Then let's move on to the finance report.
Sure. So, delinquent taxes, you can see that they continue to be up a little bit from year to year. Right now, 4 properties have been sent to the town attorney for, to be processed for tax sale.
Do you have a schedule for that yet?
No, so the process has changed a little bit. There has to be an offering of, like a payment plan.
Oh.
And that's gonna take, I think, a couple of months to kind of
Okay.
work through.
Okay.
If they refuse it, or if it's not, followed through on, then the process can kind of continue. As for fiscal, 25, we're basically at the end of it. Seems like we are, gonna be at or a little bit under budget. I think it's still a little bit too soon to completely forecast, but, things look pretty good, which is good.
When you say highway salt sand could be an issue soon, that seemed odd.
Yeah, it was,
right?
and that was a holdover from the end of winter.
Okay.
I think that the repair stuff is a little bit high again, but there's some other stuff that's under.
But
Not
if
necessarily
we're-
just in highway, but others.
If we're looking like we could be a little under, does it make sense to go ahead and make a couple of purchases of, instead of waiting and to kind of?
What do you mean? For access or?
No, I was thinking if you're having like some materials, you could buy a little more in this fiscal year or so.
Sure.
Get close to a zero to
Yep.
have the room, just sort of accelerate the purchases.
Yeah.
You don't like a little profit at the end of the year?
I'd love to come in exactly on budget.
Yeah, I mean, we
Makes it
can.
easier next year.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a substantial, difference, I don't think.
Okay.
In terms of a dollar amount.
Yeah, okay.
But I can look at it for
It
sure.
doesn't, you don't need to, yeah. Just like buying more pencils,
Right.
But then you just have to move them, so.
Yeah,
True, true.
What else can I tell you? I've updated the ARPA fund balance stuff. Mainly, the only thing that's changed is just the number for White and Burke, and that's including everything to date, including the RFP portion of the phase, and the previous work that they've done. Yeah, we should hear back on some of that VHP stuff actually at the end of the summer. But as far as the rest of the finance stuff, once we get closer into the closing out of the office project, I'll be able to project how much of the bond have we leveraged so far. And I think we've done some precursory audit stuff already for FY25. And basically have to send a bunch of reports as we close the year out to the auditor, and they'll start to compile the financial statements for 25, which usually comes in September, October. And that's it.
Okay, and I have a motion to approve the finance report as presented.
So moved?
A second.
Any discussion?
Forgot how that worked.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay, thank
Do we have
you.
the, you wanna,
The manager's report still.
Yep, the APs there. I'll try to go through the,
Probably touch base on most of it.
probably. So, while we're on camera, a big thank you to Bill Nichols, who's been employed with the town of Dorset for a little over 20 years.
yeah, Billy.
Yeah, and Bill has retired. He is going to help us a little bit, maybe one day a week or something during the summer. But he is officially done plowing snow. So he's a great guy. He's a really hard worker, and we've been really lucky to have him. So he's going to be, really big shoes to fill. So we wish him well in his retirement.
Standing ovation for Bill.
Yeah, for
All
sure.
right.
Last
He is a good man.
Last month I had talked about, the Lower Hollow Bridge. Pretty soon, I think, maybe sometime in July, letters should go out to basically everybody that's kind of adjacent to either side of the bridge, as well as public safety entities and some others that we can try to think of. Just to start to let them know bridge work, there's probably going to be access restrictions for 3 weeks to 4 weeks, sometime later this year.
Do you send a letter to Google Maps?
It's a good question. I mean, you can interact with them, but usually it takes a bit to get things changed. But it is such a short window that I would think probably not. We just
Okay.
send it to the people that matter, which are the residents, and then the folks that would need to get there in an emergency.
And you'll probably have a sign down at the fork,
Yeah,
Right.
it'll be signed probably all the way back to
8:30.
almost, yeah.
Are you actually supposed to let people like that know, the mapping folks?
I don't think so.
No, probably not.
If it was,
I was
if it
making a
was,
joke, Jim.
no, if it was,
I know, but I started
no,
thinking about,
if it was,
wow, you know,
if
how
it
would
was
you, how would,
permanent, like if it was a permanent thing, or like the
or like a
bridge,
2-year,
like if the
you
bridge
know,
had failed and we had to
detour or
just,
something.
and we didn't have a ready-made solution right away.
how do they know? Is the,
Then I think you'd have to consider.
probably people
reporting
just
it.
report it online
Yep.
on the app.
So either way, we may get some complaints when that does happen, because it'll be for the people that are right adjacent to it on the other side. It's going to be super
Yeah.
inconvenient to have
They're
to
gonna
drive
all the way around.
It's pretty, but still inconvenient.
How far is that?
3 miles,
Wow. Yeah.
probably additional.
That's annoying.
2.5, 3 miles. That they
See your
would have
house,
to
but
drive.
no, I can't get there. Yeah.
Did you ever hear the
It's
story
like
of
an extra 10 minutes driving.
old man King who lived
Bill.
and when they were going to do the ski area at the end of the hollow,
Mm-hmm.
and they made a big presentation in Kit Wallace's house at the end of the hollow, with a big diorama of the hollow and the hollow was going to be a one-way road, basically going upper hollow in and lower hollow out. And Bill King said, "So you mean to get my New York Times in the morning, I need to drive all the way in?" He said, "Forget about it." And he had a lot of influence, and that was
That's funny.
the end of it.
Let's see, what else? The fire district, I alluded to some of this before the meeting, but we are trying to slog through state approval. We got some funding, did a project, came in under budget, trying to do a kind of a second contract with the same funding, and we're kind of getting dragged through a bit of a rigmarole with the environmental review, unfortunately. So we're hopeful that we can push through and still leverage the funding. It's about $660,000 of the $1.6 million project. That would be basically
It's a lot of money.
grants and
a lot of
forgiveness. So
That would be horrible to lose.
Yeah.
yes, it would. Yep. So I'll keep you abreast of it. The great partner where they're going to allow people to park there. I think there's access to restrooms. let us stage tents, and I think the start and the finish. And it's a pretty good little course. There's not a ton of, there's a decent amount of uphill, but a good downhill. So
It's been nicely marketed. You
Yeah.
see the signs all over
Yeah.
the place.
Yep. The idea is the registration fees will go back to the department basically to offset costs. But more or less, it's a nice thing for to show off the town forest and just to have activities.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
All right, does anybody have any other business? We have one item of personnel that I'd like to go into executive session to
Okay.
Okay.
discuss.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel issues.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, we're in executive session. All right, we are back in session.
Okay. All right, so I'd just like to make a motion that we indicate to the town manager that we were supportive of what was discussed in executive session.
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All right.
All right, the lack of any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Beat me. I will second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Bye, Allison.
Thanks, Al.